Welcome back for a bonus segment of the Colorblind Architect podcast. I was continuing my hike and I was remembering some thoughts that I had concerning building permit processes. Obviously, as an architect, I have to deal with this kind of thing all the time. And typically, with a building permit process, you have a private developer. And that private developer has a contractor who's also private and an architect who's also private. But as a team, they submit the drawings to the authority having jurisdiction, most often a city. But years ago, I worked on a project for the Army Corps of Engineers. I was employed with a private architecture firm at the time, and the general contractor was also private, but so as private contractors to the federal government, our client was the Army Corps of Engineers. Now, the weird thing, the way that the federal government does procurement for architectural and construction projects, the federal government is both the client and also the authority having jurisdiction. As in, the federal government does not have to submit plans to a local jurisdiction. They have their own jurisdiction over federal lands. Now, this one project, we were in construction, and our general contractor, who we were partnered with as a design build group, well, they were a bit miffed because the Army Corps of Engineers, they rejected a piece of B deck, or basically kind of like a corrugated metal deck, but it's basically what you lay out over the steel before you pour concrete to make the floor of, an upper floor on a building. And this particular piece of B deck, they rejected it, and they claimed that it was because it was all rusted out and stuff. And of course, the contractor, they appealed that decision. However, the problem was it was rejected by the client, who's also the authority having jurisdiction, the Army Corps of Engineers. And in this case, they also were the appeals agency. So, as you can see, there's kind of a conflict of interest. The Army Corps of Engineers, they wanted a different piece of B deck, and yep, they got it. It didn't matter that they may or may not have been right or wrong with this particular piece of steel. All that matters is that they got what they want. Now, this is a relatively minor issue, and, as an owner, the federal government, the Army Corps of Engineers, they had good reason to consider it important to make sure that they get only the best quality. And, you could argue that they were justified. But here's the thing. What if it had been something else? What if it had been something that the contractor had actually provided something meeting the specs? And in this case, they might have actually done that. But if they had, it still didn't matter. The Army Corps of Engineers could have still just stuck it to them, because they were client, plaintiff, judge, jury. So, as you can see, when the police are policing themselves, there tends to be a problem. So, all this to say, our Constitution has a system of checks and balances. And one of the problems that we have with Biden's announcement yesterday concerning vaccine mandates is he's talking about going around the states, around the governors who might try to block them, and force it anyways. Well, first off, nobody voted on this. Congress never voted on mandatory vaccines. The president does not have the power to legislate. Worse yet, you're talking about an executive action where they are the plaintiff, but they're also the judge and the jury, because they are enforcing it themselves. And so hopefully our court system will fight against this. Again, not because I'm against vaccines or anything. I'm not. I'm against mandatory vaccines. I'm against anybody being compelled against their wishes to receive a medical treatment against their will. Now you might say, oh, but it's for the protection of the people. Yeah, that's always what tyrants say. They always say, I'm doing this to protect the people. It doesn't change the fact that when you eliminate checks and balances from a system, when you make the police the police, it typically means they're going to get up to some shenanigans. And people's rights are going to be harmed. I mean, I would love to imagine that our government is 100% moral and only looking out for our best interest. And maybe they are. Maybe I'm just a crackpot. But how many times do we have to see this play out in countries around the world where a tyrant comes to power using the banner of, but I'm here to protect the people? And with that, I bid you adieu for another day. Peace out.